Good day. This is Richard Wexler with Caring in America, the podcast for caregivers and care recipients. Folks, the ones that have been with me for quite a while know my story. About 20 years ago, minding my own business in the software industry, married later, 2 small kids, and all of a sudden in the summer of '05, our phone starts ringing, and we wind up caring for all 4 of our parents between my wife and myself that we thought were doing very well. And in fact, they weren't. And that care journey lasted for 14 years until the final parent passed at 96 in 2019. Go back to '05, realized I could barely spell the word care, left what I was doing in the software industry, started my first company, Points of Light, started reading everything I could about getting older, caring, etc. And then eventually started educating people all over Northern California, where I was living at that time. And then eventually across the country, started this podcast well over 2 years ago. And then earlier part of 25 started our national nonprofit, A Plan to Age, that I run. And we had a special guest with us this morning. I'm going to give a little background on her, Kathy Heary. She has an RN, a BA, and a master's. She runs Positive Aging Productions as a writer and producer. And over her 45-year career in healthcare and aging services, as I said, she began as an RN clinician. She has a very diverse background that includes degrees in writing, nursing, and the masters that I mentioned, and she honed her skills as a writer over all those years. For 20 years, she successfully ran a geriatric care management and consulting practice. She's traveled across the nation, across the world, and translated her experiences into compelling publications, ebooks, and engaging videos sharing her wealth and knowledge. Hello, Kathy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Richard. Absolutely fine. Thank you for that introduction.
You're very welcome. Welcome this morning. So let's start at the beginning. Let's go back a couple years. I guess it's been almost 45. Who are you? Why the bachelor's degree? Why the RN degree? Why the master's? What were you looking to accomplish, ma'am?
Well, I started out in nursing, ICU nursing, actually, out there in the West Coast with you in California. And I did for about 15 years, but I've been a writer all my life, ever since high school. I was the one that was always being called to write for the yearbook, do this, do that. And journalism was in my blood. So that's how I ended up in journalism. And then I put them together to get a master's in communication, because I was in the corporate world after I left my ICU nursing, and there was a real pull for people who had computer skills and communication skills. So as part of my program in product development in those national and international positions, I use this quite frequently and have kept it current. I find the technology and communications is key no matter what you do. That's on that side. Also, I've been a family caregiver, like you mentioned. I was in my 30s when both my parents went down, and it was a 10-year journey with
Wow.
11 kids and getting married, and it was that time of life. And then I just finished a caregiver journey with my sister who passed last year. And so I see what works, what doesn't, and what's pulling me forward. My passion is building systems and models, which I'm starting a retreat series for caregivers next year that work, because I've been on both sides of the streets.
Yeah, let's talk about that caregiving journey. I was talking with another individual on a previous podcast about like in my life, in her life, maybe this was your life, maybe it wasn't, but you're just going about life and you're doing all the things we do from a career perspective, from a family perspective. And most of us, and that's why we started a plan to age with the whole idea of planning, aren't really prepared before we get what used to be the phone call. Now it can be the text as well, that something happened to mom, something's happened to grandfather, something's happened to a brother or sister. Were you prepared emotionally, physically? You mentioned in your 30s when things started happening with your parents, or was that more of a surprise?
Well, I think back then, um, there was a belief that we had that the healthcare system would take care of all this. We had no perception of the differences between acute care and long-term care. And, with the hospitalizations and that whole cycle of in and out and in and out, and all of the details of managing the situation fell on the family. And so that was a catalyst for starting my own business in 2000 when they died. Um, I kept saying, what do people do who don't have anyone to do this? This meaning all the stuff that we do as caregivers.
Yeah.
And that was why. Even then, nobody was really planning. Even today, nobody plans. I'm 30 years out from my initial journey, and you're still putting out fires. People don't want to plan. What I found is the best place to get them is when the family's in the middle of a crisis, that others get that aha moment in the family and say, oh, wow, I've got to do some stuff for myself.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. One of the things we talk about a lot, there's, and you may have seen a report earlier this year from the AARP about the number of caregivers out there. And I've said this multiple times. They say the report says there are about 63 million caregivers in this country, and about 61% of those are women. And the term I use all the time is baloney, because I truly believe those numbers are extremely conservative, but
Yeah.
most people won't even, I don't know if you agree with this or not, most people won't even acknowledge the fact that they're a caregiver.
Yeah, there are many ways. I see people who feel it's their responsibility as a family member. They just step up and don't even realize they're drowning. It's like that boiled frog. The temperature gets turned up slowly and slowly, and they don't realize it until they get sick themselves. Very, very common. But, you know, caregiver is kind of a loose term, and, it means different things to different people. And for me, I've shifted to helping people help themselves rather than trying to do everything for them. When people lose that autonomy and lose that sense of independence, they push back.
Well, one of the things you brought up, and I will concur with personally and professionally, and I've spoken to, as you have, to thousands and thousands of people, and I try to tell them that when you get in this role, you're probably not prepared. It probably is in crisis, but you also don't know how big this role as a caregiver can be and all the different components, not just going to mom's house and helping her get fed and maybe helping her get to bed and things like that, but all the other components that come with it, to the legal pieces, to the financial pieces, to connecting with the appropriate resources out there. Can you speak about that for a minute or so?
Yeah, that's an excellent point because that was the tip of my practice that I learned over 20 years. And I built a model and I looked at those, what I call 10 domains of aging for all of us. We all have to pay attention to them, which is our financial situation. What insurance do we select? Where do we live? How do we live? What are our plans for the future? What's our health status and our medical status, which are two different things? And also, how to pull together a methodology, if you will, or a blueprint for your own aging before selecting services and supports. What I've found is most people select one service that looks at one area, they go deep, they're in it financially for a lot of money, insurance doesn't pay for it, and then I would get called in and try to help clean it up. So I kept trying to move further and further upstream to help people say, okay, we're in this medical situation now. You're in rehab. You're getting ready to go home. Here's areas we need to look at to prevent this from happening again, because this is going to cascade unless we do X, Y, or Z.
Oh, no, and I completely agree with you. And I think you and I are on the same page here. And part of why we started a plan to age. So, we said, okay, a couple years from now, this we're less than a year old. Couple years into it, it's going fantastic. But most people will still deal with this in crisis.
Yeah.
And what drives me insane, and I'm not about to get into politics, that part of why I wanted to start this is to create national conversations like this. People just don't understand. And you've said a lot of this, you've experienced it, I've experienced it personally and professionally. Is the government there to help us? No. Will Medicare pay for long term care for mom or dad? No. Will most people qualify for Medicaid? No. Do they want to live in the back of a skilled nursing community on Medicaid dollars? Not when they see what that really looks like.
Yeah.
So, from an education standpoint, we as a country fall far down the hole. And we really have to do a better job of helping people understand, as you're talking about, what's coming and what this is going to look like. Can you talk about positive aging productions and what you're doing there?
So it has three tracks really. One is I'm creating YouTube videos to educate people on bits and pieces of this. If what it's like to be a caregiver, what the difference is between healthcare and care and health. Just kind of to tease it out. I've written a few books that I now do myself. I've written many books that I was hired to do, and I did in my professional career. And now I'm writing my most recent one, Reclaim Your Aging Experience, gets into all of these issues that we're trying to touch on here today.
Mm.
And then with that, I start embedding them into my videos and programs. And so I have a site on, I sell through Amazon rather than run around at the bookstores. And finally, locally, I think all healthcare is local. Um, I assist people through in-depth support groups, seminars, and as I mentioned, I'm starting retreats for caregivers after the first of the year, which are part education, part respite, to help as being a caregiver like yourself, like myself, that credibility of having walked that walk is huge. And I think from what I've been told and what I've experienced, when people are giving me advice and they have no idea of the journey, I tend to shut down. And this is what a lot of people have coming at them. You got to get your estate plan done. And we all know how important that is. And I agree. But, it's like, take time to learn about me as a person and where I am. When I'm overwhelmed, like you were with your folks, you're not going to take time out to do this estate planning methodically. You're going to be crisis planning like everything else. And that's why having the credibility both as a caregiver and as an RN and a background and experience, I'm using this to try to reach out to people. I am reaching out to people. I'm having a lot of success actually um, with people that are calling and asking the right questions and helping them understand how to frame their questions. What is it you don't know? And you listen to them talk, and then you find out where they're confused, and then you can direct. So this is a lot of what I'm doing. The production work uses a lot of my communication skills that I've built over the years.
No, I think that's fantastic. And again, just trying to, and why you're doing this podcast, or why we have folks like you on, just trying to get this national conversation out there, trying to take something and hit people gently over the head to wake up. If you have older loved ones in your life, if you're aging, have siblings, something, this, who we are currently in 2025, maybe years from now, this will change. But at some point, we break down. And at some point, at the long-term care insurance industry, and I blow this number out of the water, says about 70% of us are going to need long-term care. I say that's baloney. It's more like 95% of us, where some of us will just need a few hours. Some of us will need years of care. Most of us will need something in the middle, but most of us are going to need care. And it's a subject, as you talk about, or I talk about, people don't want to talk about. When I ask them about being prepared, oh, yes, we're prepared. And they'll say something similar to what you just said. Well, we did our estate plan. Well,
Yeah.
I'm an attorney. I go, great. Thank you for doing your estate plan. But again, do you know all these other components that come into play when you're caregiving? If you could maybe in a sentence or two kind of talk about your mission. What are you trying to do to help people out there, maybe as they approach 50 and their loved ones, parents maybe are 80 or above? What is your mission?
So again, it's to help people to help themselves. And anybody is, if anyone who's aging, as a matter of fact, I opened my book with a side by side comparison of preparing our transition from childhood to adulthood and what we need to go through those plans as we move away from the dependency of systems and structures into that role of adulthood, whatever that may be. And we have the same process we need to go through as we move from adulthood to elderhood. And and they're side by side to show. And I look and I tried to make it as basic and as simple as possible that this is a life transition. It's not a disease. It's not a medical condition. And I can tell you from doing thousands of evaluations over my career, one of the things that people fear about all of this is if they open their door and let somebody take a look at what's going on, that, oh my God, something will happen. I'll be taken away. I'll be put in a nursing home. I'll be reported as unsafe. And there's that fear of losing independence and losing privacy that's very real for folks.
I think you're 100% right. And that's in what you're doing and what we're doing, trying to get people to understand, first of all, that big four-letter word plan. But if you plan, if you get educated, as we're trying to do and you're trying to do, and you understand what's going to happen for mom, what's going to happen for dad, what's going to happen for us as we age, what are the options? One of the biggest things, this other small little four-letter word, what's the cost of care? I've been One of the last things I'm going to talk about, I've been yelling at financial planners for 20 years. When I speak with them and ask them the options for care, they don't understand them. And when I ask them what care costs, they're off by thousands of dollars. So we work with families, or they do, talking about saving for retirement, but they don't talk about saving for this little word called care. So as we get ready to wrap up, first couple questions. First, if people want to get in touch with you, email, phone number, website, what would you like to give out?
So the website is positiveagingproductions.com. And that's a direct link to me.
Okay.
And, you know, at this point, I would, the fear, there's so much going on right now that people that might have been a little open to this are putting it to the bottom of the pile because there's just so much going on. And your point about cost is huge. When I would bring up cost, because I do a cost benefit analysis for a lot of the options for people, and they would just shake in their boots when they realized how much out of pocket. No, Medicare doesn't pay for this. No, you don't qualify for Medicaid. Um, if they had a long-term care insurance policy, they had no idea what it covered. So you'd have to pull that out and wrap it into the whole picture. But there is this sense, I don't know if you've, Richard, seen it, is that it will take care of itself. Like it's going to magically be taken care of. That I'm going to go into the hospital and someone's going to outline my whole plan and it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I completely agree with you. I've said before, it's like, I don't think my wife and I are stupid, but we I've used exactly what you said. Did we think magic was gonna take care? First of all, we didn't think all four, but magic was gonna take care of them
yeah.
instead of us. And I think you're completely correct. Last thing I want to ask you, as we get ready to sign off, if you have some advice for people, what would that advice be?
Um, before you make a costly decision about anything, please speak to someone who has some independence and knowledge of aging, geriatrics, gerontology. Um, don't don't jump on the bandwagon. If it's free, it's for me, and then end up in a place you don't want to be. So that would be my advice.
That's awesome. It's great advice, folks. And again, what we're doing, if we can get more, and I know Kathy agrees with this, get more people to plan instead of dealing with this, like part of what she may have to went through and what we went through in crisis.
Mhm.
Millions of people go through, folks. It'll never Caring for a loved one is never easy, but I've been telling folks for a long time, having a plan, and I know you got to change that plan and update that plan as things happen. It will make it easier.
It does. It does. When the crisis hits, you can go to your little keyboard and go, okay, boom, 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 boom. And at least you have some idea of what's coming and are ready for it. Will it be everything? No, no plan is perfect. But boy, it's safe anxiety and a lot of time when it does hit.
Now, that's fantastic. Thank you, Kathy. I thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you and take care and have a happy new year, Richard.
You too, folks, until we talk again. Have
Okay.
yourself an awesome day.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.